Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. We have the latest in the ongoing Hong Kong protest. Plus, the verdict for ASAP Rocky is in, and we're checking out a 16-year-old environmental activist who's making some waves. But first, here are your headlines.
Reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley are in legal hot water.
We're going to get a second opinion.
The married couple, along with their accountant, indicted by a federal grand jury in Atlanta on 12 counts, including tax evasion, bank fraud, and wire fraud. According to this 27-page indictment, the couple did not pay income taxes from 2013 to 2016, and the Chrisleys tried to secure loans by using false documents to banks. In one case, Todd was copied on a personal financial statement that falsely claimed Todd Chrisley had $4 million at Merrill Lynch. Todd allegedly responding, "You are a expletive genius. Just make it show 4 mil." This indictment, 27 pages, also alleging the Chrisleys used their production company to hide some of their TV income from the IRS.
Democratic attorneys general from 21 states have sued the Trump administration over the move to ease restrictions on coal-fired power plants. California Governor Gavin Newsom has declared the president is trying to rescue an outdated industry.
Facebook confirming it hired contractors to listen to and then transcribe audio chats of users on its Messenger app. Facebook says it wanted to make sure voice messages were being correctly interpreted. The company says, much like Apple and Google, it paused the practice more than a week ago. Several big tech companies have come under fire for collecting audio clips of users from your device.
Alligator bite. It's a 68-year-old female was bitten by an alligator. We do not know where the alligator is or how large it was.
The terrifying alligator attack in South Carolina. A woman was bitten in the wrist and leg by a 9-foot gator at her retirement community. She was walking her dog near a pond Monday night. Experts say the period from sunset to sunrise is prime feeding time for gators.
We begin in Hong Kong, a remarkable scene yesterday as pro-democracy protesters clashed with riot police in the main terminal of one of the world's busiest airports. 2 days of serious disruption that forced more than 100 flight cancellations. But today, more calm. So I want to bring in Carson Yu, who's been on the ground at the airport in Hong Kong, and he's on the phone right now. Carson, you saw all of this go down from peaceful protesting to full-out riot and now back to calm. So what's happening at this point?
Well, right now at the airport's operating like any other, like it usually does. There's only about 100 protesters still in the cordoned-off area. The airport was able to win an court injunction last night to kind of seal off these protesters in a certain zone. If they cross it, they can be removed. And the airport also implemented passport and itinerary checks for anybody going into the terminal. So they're kind of regulating the flow of people. And I think the business is getting back to normal, at least here in the airport.
Yeah, and we saw that these protests, it's been going on for 10 weeks now all over the city. But what was the significance of choosing the airport for these demonstrations?
Well, there's two things. First off, the Hong Kong International Airport is where Hong Kong welcomes the world. And these protesters wanted to get their message out to international tourists and passengers. And as they come out of the arrival gates, that's where the protest is. And they have posters and art. And for the most part, during the peaceful part of the demonstration, they were getting their ideas across. But yesterday, as you saw, there started to be some confrontation between stranded passengers and the protesters. And also, the protesters were making a gamble that the police would not enter the international airport to clear them out violently or with tear gas or pepper spray.
Yeah, it was.
And for the most part, that was true because the police never came completely inside the airport last night, despite the chaotic scene.
Yeah, it was very chaotic, and as we said, it's calm now, but there's other neighborhoods in the city right now that are experiencing some protests as well?
So just in the last few hours, a confrontation started up again in the neighborhood of Sham Tsui Po. It's a heavily residential and commercial area. And Sumtrep has seen a few confrontations over the past few weeks because the local police station arrested a student with 10 laser pointers. As you remember, these protesters have been using laser pointers against the police. So when the police arrested this student for laser pointers, they called it an offensive weapon. Whereas you can commercially buy laser pointers everywhere, which enraged protesters, and they've been surrounding these police stations to make their voices heard or make their anger heard.
Yeah, and just a reminder for people who've been, keeping up with this, these massive demonstrations were over that controversial extradition bill, which Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam introduced and then suspended. But do you think it's going to be completely withdrawn? That's what they're asking for, right?
That's what they're asking for, and the answer is it's a technicality, and I don't think it's going to be officially withdrawn, because the clue came when Beijing asked to meet with kind of the elite Beijing loyalists up in the neighboring city of Shenzhen, and the head of the Hong Kong office said they can't formally withdraw the bill because that would mean that their initial intention of putting forward the bill was wrong. So it has become a point of pride and saving face. So it's unlikely that Beijing would cede this position, even if advisors of Carrie Lam within Hong Kong is advising the Hong Kong government to do so, which kind of diffuse tension.
All right, Carson, you right there on the ground in Hong Kong. Thank you for the updates so much. We appreciate it. And guys, a seemingly dangerous situation in Moscow. A mysterious explosion from a nuclear-powered missile engine in Russia left 7 people dead and has spiked radiation levels way past the norm. So I want to bring in James Longman on the ground there. James, good to see you. You know, the details around this explosion have been pretty secret. We have doctors signing non-disclosure agreements. What's happening?
Yeah, that's right, Kimberly. I mean, Russia, as ever, pretty secretive, right? And just on those doctors, yeah, we understand that something like 10 doctors, maybe 7 or 8, came down from that area. It's about 600 miles north of where I am now on the Arctic coast to get treatment at a hospital. It's understood that they did that of their own accord. No word yet on how they are, but I don't think there is any suggestion that they have any kind of life-threatening illness. But these people were involved in the treatment of people up in the north. I think this scared people, obviously, because some of the pictures we saw were with paramedics and emergency workers in hazmats. That looked pretty bad, especially given a dark patch in Russian history, of course, the Chernobyl incident in 1986 that killed so many people, and effects of which continue to be felt until this day. But the headline here is that there doesn't seem to be a serious radiation issue in the north. In fact, there was a spike just after this blast, almost a week ago now, where it's thought the radiation levels went up by between 4 to 16 times the normal amount. Again, that sounds like a lot, but just to put it in context, after Chernobyl, it was many thousands of times more, so not massively dangerous. I've actually got one of these Geiger counters that we've seen people using. I'm not going to pretend I know how to use it. This is literally nuclear science, after all. But basically, in most parts of Russia where you go, you won't get much more than a 0 on any of these things. The issue might be, though, that in one of the towns near this, where this blast took place, that there are different kinds of radiation that people can be poisoned by, and a lot of the readings are reading gamma rays, which one of the more deadly types of radiation that can go through the human body and cause real illness. But there are other kinds of radiation, and I was talking to a specialist just yesterday, because again, Kimberly, this is not coming from me, who was talking about alpha rays, which is the kind of radiation that you can actually ingest if in particles. If you're near an explosion, for instance, they can come down. If you breathe them in, that can actually cause real illness, and we haven't really had any clarity about whether or not that's a problem. But I think that's that word, clarity. The issue here isn't necessarily that there's been a massive kind of radiation outbreak in the north of Russia. It's that the Russians don't seem to want to talk about it, and that just fuels this kind of fear and speculation.
All right, James Longman right there on the ground in Moscow. Thank you for the updates. We'll definitely keep an eye on this. Thank you. And guys, we're also keeping you updated on the Jeffrey Epstein case. As you know, the multimillionaire was a registered sex offender, now dead by suicide ahead of his trial, and many questions still surrounding the circumstances of his death. So I want to bring in Aaron Katursky, who's been following the story and actually broke the story of his death. So Aaron, there's a New York Times report that says the guards who were supposed to check on Jeffrey every 30 minutes were actually sleeping.
And we haven't independently verified that they were sleeping, but we knew that they failed to adhere to the protocol that required a welfare check on Jeffrey Epstein and other inmates on that same cell block every 30 minutes. We've learned that they may have doctored logs to show that they made those welfare checks when in fact they did not. So that's all part of the investigation now being led by the FBI and the Department of Justice Inspector General. Those 2 guards have now been put on temporary leave, and the warden has been reassigned to a desk job with the Bureau of Prisons, and a temporary acting warden has been brought in.
Yeah, so there's a change in leadership, and it kind of makes you wonder if these things are happening all the time, these sort of protocol breaches. But this is just a high-profile case.
Well, therefore, it's a high-profile mistake. And, of course, the overarching question is, was Jeffrey Epstein left largely alone and largely unsupervised on purpose, or was it just a failing? And if so, who's to blame? But the Bureau of Prisons has had a tough year. Before Jeffrey Epstein's suicide, Whitey Bulger was killed. The notorious gangster was killed in federal prison in West Virginia the day he arrived at that facility. And for a time, MDC in Brooklyn, the jail in Brooklyn, federal lockup there, lost power for a week in the middle of winter, leaving inmates just freezing and shivering in their cells. So the Bureau of Prisons has shortcomings, and this, with Epstein, just brought those more to the fore.
And I want to ask you about the Child Victims Act, because that's coming into play here, because some of the lawyers for the accused plan to take advantage of this.
Already have. In fact, we've seen the first lawsuit filed by Jennifer Arreos. She's now in her 30s, but when she was 14, she said she was at her high school here in Manhattan, was recruited by a woman who appeared to her to be in her 20s, and she was recruited into Jeffrey Epstein's allegedly lurid world. And she said by the time she was 15, she had been sexually assaulted by Epstein, and now she's suing his estate, a woman named Ghislaine Maxwell, who's been accused of being his madam, and 3 of Epstein's household staff members who have not been identified in court records. And she said today that her innocence was robbed, her youth was stolen, and now she is trying to get some of that back by filing suit. And we expect other lawsuits to take advantage of this reprieve in New York state law that eliminates the statute of limitations when it comes to child sex abuse.
So there's sort of like 2 things going on, figuring out about his death and figuring out who's held accountable.
And the third piece is continuing the criminal investigation to see if any of his alleged enablers can be held to account in a criminal court, whether they can be charged with a crime so victims can get their day in court that way.
All right, Aaron Katursky with the latest. Thank you for being here. We appreciate the updates. And guys, we move on to some serious weather in Kansas. A portion of a highway was closed because of a storm so strong that it actually blew over multiple semi-trucks. Imagine that. And today, more storm threats across the country and some possible tornadoes. So Rob Marciano has the latest in Milwaukee. Rob?
Hey, Kimberly, great to be with you. A little bit of rain on and off this morning here in Milwaukee, but nothing compared to really the rough weather we had in the Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic yesterday. Let's show you some of the video. A couple of tornadoes touching down just to our west in Minnesota, and this one in Joe's, Colorado. That's a beauty. Unfortunately, over 180 damaging storm reports, including big hail the size of grapefruit there, and damaging winds. This is Hayes, Kansas. Semis just blown over. Winds gusting there to 82 miles per hour. Same deal in Nebraska, 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and heavy rain too, just east of St. Louis. In Clinton County, Illinois, you see a water rescue ongoing there. And we'll see similar action today, although drift down to the south and then reload here, I think, in the high plains east of Denver, eastern parts of Wyoming, western parts of Nebraska and Kansas. A couple of tornadoes possible, but damaging winds and huge hail are going to be the main player. Meanwhile, across the south, I think that the core of that really hot stuff kind of gets squeezed towards the Gulf Coast as this front finally sags a little south, but Houston, which had a 103 degree high temperature, not including humidity, measured in the shade yesterday,
That was the warmest they've been in 5 years. They'll have a heat index of 106 and similar numbers all the way in through Georgia. And now we've got heat warnings out for the Southwest and much of California, Phoenix, Palm Springs, Sacramento, but heat advisories as well for the San Francisco Bay Area. So everybody out there is going to bake not just today, but it looks like through the end of this week. We are in Milwaukee. I love this town. Kimberly, wish you were here. GMA Summer Road Trip heads to Chicago tomorrow. Back to you.
Thank you, Rob. Wish I was there too. Thank you so much. And guys, we moved to Sweden for the verdict everyone has been waiting for with hip-hop artist A$AP Rocky. So let's take a listen to him talking to his fans.
Listen, I know y'all was praying for me. I'm gonna need y'all to keep praying for me. You know what I'm saying?
All right, so now we know the court has found him guilty of assault for that fight in the streets of Stockholm at the end of June, but he will serve no additional jail time. So I want to bring in Candace Williams with ABC Radio. Candace, I just want to get your thoughts on this and really what happens next for him.
Well, yes, thanks, Kimberly. So right now, I mean, he will have to pay a little bit of restitution, him and his other two affiliates, about $1,300, which I'm sure is not too much for them. I mean, obviously, A$AP Rocky's a well-known rapper. But right now, it's honestly, he's going to be having a good time, I think. I know I was looking at the socials already. They're talking about releasing music. Juicy J, 3 6 Mafia. He's like, I'm about to release this song with him. It's party mode a little bit. They're a little bit relaxed. I don't think anybody is more so concerned about the trial now that, you know, he has to pay and make sure he stays on the straight and narrow, because obviously if anything happens while if he decides to come back to Sweden, it could be problematic for him, and he will be serving jail time if that's the case. But I think he's going to stay out of trouble moving forward. Right now, I think he's focused on shows, making music, and just living his best life.
Yeah, so he's just on a probationary period, basically.
Yeah, he's on a probationary period, and his focus right now is just kind of doing what he needs to do, making good on the money that he owes to this man, Jafari, and kind of moving forward from that. I mean, clearly he's going to stay on the straight and narrow, and just make sure that he consistently does what he needs to do and stays out of the headlines in this respect.
And how have other artists responded to his victory?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of like rejoicing. I mean, I don't think, honestly, after all the backlash about what happened, because as we know, even though we saw video as well of others kind of instigating the fight, I think everybody's kind of very much trying to stay away from Sweden in the sense of artists and performers. They've already said that, hey, I'm not going to go out there and support anything because of what happened, because it seemed in the public's opinion, because we're also tried on that court as well, that people aren't excited to go to a country where someone else can instigate a fight, and then you can be, found guilty of a crime.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you about something else since you're here. Yeah. Other major news, billionaire JayZ and his company Roc Nation are partnering with the NFL. They say so they can work on live game experiences and social justice efforts. So I want your thoughts on this, because everyone has a question about this, because you can't really talk about social justice in the NFL without talking about Colin Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick. Yeah. Now, just last week, he released a video basically documenting the fact that he is ready to go at any point in time. It's been, at that particular time, it was 889 days. He put in the videos that he's been without a job at the NFL. That was he said basically, specifically, that they denied me a job. So, he's still in that mindset to work. He's still in that mindset of being proactive. However, obviously, he wanted to bring attention to what's going on with the shootings and unarmed black men and women being shot. So there's still that to be worked out. Now, JayZ's coming in, and hopefully that will rectify and create a bridge. Let's be honest, JayZ is a businessman, and clearly when he comes into this situation, he's like his music says, you need me, I don't need you, he said in his song. Yes. So clearly when he boycotted the NFL because apparently they wanted him to play the Super Bowl. So I think the NFL now is at a position where they do need him. They realize they're not going to get any performers, any rappers, any of those African-American stars to come in and support. And at the end of the day, it's a business, and they have to be able to make money. They have to bring in viewership. Now, would I say that Colin Kaepernick will then all of a sudden now be brought back in? I don't know. I mean, there's still conversations from other players and other people who have chimed in saying, well, it's not just the fact of what he did as far as the protest or creating awareness, it's also the fact that he may not be up to par. But, you know, as I said,
he's showing that he is.
He's showing that he is.
And JayZ and Colin, I mean, JayZ has shown his full support for Kaepernick over the course of this time.
Yes, absolutely. They've been consistently, you know, in each other's presence and also supportive online, whatnot, and you've seen them at certain things. So I think that there is going to be probably, and I don't know this, but I would say that there's probably going to be a conversation about Colin Kaepernick specifically from JayZ at some point in time. Because again, if you're going to bring me in to do work, here's the work that I want to do. I want to bring in this player who I know is ready to go. You saw the video, you see he's in the gym, you see he's ready to make it happen. Let's do it. He got 99 problems, but NFL ain't one, so.
You're hilarious. I love it. Candace Williams with ABC Radio. Thank you for being with us today. All right, guys. So Oscar Wilde said, life imitates art far more than art imitates life. But either way, when a project like a movie is too close to real life tragedies, sometimes it has to be postponed. So take the movie The Hunt there. You're seeing a clip of it now, a movie where a group of elites are killing right-wing people for sport. And in the wake of the latest mass shootings, Universal canceled the release. So I want to bring in journalist Candace Frederick. Candace, good to see you. You know, let's be clear. This film was controversial before the mass shootings, and I just want you to remind us why.
Well, I don't know. I kind of balk against that a little bit. I don't think that it was particularly controversial, at least from where I stand, from the more liberal stance. I think that any time you show this aggressive form of gun violence in a trailer, which is really all we really saw prior to the mass shootings that recently occurred, is a trigger for people. And I think because it's coming off of many other mass shootings that have happened throughout this year and last year and most recently, that was a trigger for people. But I don't think that people were just like, oh, you know, I don't think this movie should happen. I don't think there was a lot of that, particularly if you've seen like any other movie that is action or thriller or horror, has these images of guns and images of people basically hunting other people. So I don't think that it was particularly, I didn't think that it was particularly a huge source of controversy until the shootings. And of course, until Donald Trump tweeted what he tweeted about it, which, well, supposedly he was tweeting in response to the trailer, but that his tweet was vague.
So what has been some of the reaction to it getting shelved now?
Mixed. Some people have called it censorship. Some people have said, you know, you're right. It should be canned. This is a really responsible move on behalf of Sony Blumhouse and Universal. So it's really mixed, and it's also really mixed among liberal people. So I think that I think it's definitely a source of conversation, but I don't think that this is just the latest in a trend of films and TV shows that have been pulled. We've seen it with The Interview. I think that was 2 years ago. We also saw it with Heathers, the TV show, the remake of the 1980s movie, which was actually pulled in the wake of another shooting that was happening at that time. So we've seen this a lot. So I don't think there's going to be anyone kind of crying over it, but you know, it is a missed opportunity kind of to provoke conversation, which I think that Universal and particularly Blumhouse has really done. And if you've seen like The Purge and things like that, which films like that have really been politically provocative and really been unforgivably violent. So if you're into that kind of it depends on who you're talking to. It is quite mixed.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this, but I just want to ask you, do you think there are concerns that this could be a form of censorship?
Yeah, there have been already. I mean, I think people, once you yank something from the release schedule, people grow concerned. Okay, well, what's next? Or what are they going to not what are they going to not let us show next? What are we not going to be able to see? Is everything going to be kind of neutered, so to speak? So there are real concerns with that. I think there are real concerns with the pathology of what we're seeing, and particularly younger audiences. I know video games has been under fire, but I think, a lot of these conversations are kind of, in contention with one another. I don't think that, I don't know how it will affect moving forward the release schedule for other movies, because I don't think that this is going to be the first movie that we've seen that shows this type of imagery, and the first movie where we're going to have this conversation again.
All right, Candace Frederick with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your feedback there. And guys, remember when Whitney Houston said, "I believe the children are the future"? Well, they are, like 16-year-old Greta Sundberg from Sweden. What were you doing at 16? Well, Greta is GQ's Game Changer of the Year because Greta is an environmental activist who plans to attend the UN climate summits in New York at the end of September and in Chile, but she refused to travel by air because of the environmental impact. So she's taken a boat and she's starting in England. And I want to bring in Aisha Hammer with the updates. Aisha, so what happened? This is so awesome. What happened in Plymouth, England, where she was before she set sail?
I mean, it was very, very exciting. Basically, a team from Monaco, from Hamburg, traveled to Plymouth here in England to help her to make this amazing challenge happening. So Greta spent 2 nights here in Plymouth with her dad and with her PR team, and she has been able to start sailing to America. Just like 30 minutes ago, she just left from here, and yeah, she's about to join America. It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. And you were actually able to speak to her dad. What did he say?
I spoke to him briefly because it's a very, very intense moment. I mean, we are talking about a young girl who is 16 years old and who is about to sail for the first time of her life, who is slightly seasick, to be honest with you, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, I had a chance to see the boat. You don't have any restroom on the boat. You have like very basic bed, and as she's a child or a teenager, she will have a cushion. So I mean, it's like a very, very tough journey that she's starting right now, and it's going to be like very, very intense for her.
And once she makes it to, I think it's a 2-week journey. Once she makes it to New York, what is her message? What does she plan to say at the summit?
I mean, she wants to raise awareness about our own behavior, how we can be creative to change our habits, our bad habits. That's basically what she wants us to do. And I think that I can say that she's a big inspiration for the world, and not just for the young generation. Also, I mean, I did see like many people here coming to support her, and not just young people. And they're really questioning themselves about how they can do to change the world.
It's incredible. And before we go, so there's one in New York, and then there's another one that's in Chile. Does she plan to sail down to South America also?
At least not for this boat. I mean, this boat is basically a race boat, like the Malaysia team boat. And I mean, basically, it's not going to be with this boat that she's heading to Chile. Most likely, she will take the train to head down south. It's going to be quite amazing. I mean, what she said today to journalists that she really wants to take, she wants to go like step by step. That's what she wants. So she doesn't really know yet how she's going to be able to join South America. But one thing that it absolutely shows that she's a very strong person. And if she wants to accomplish something, she will. That's a fact.
All right, Aisha Hammer right there in Plymouth, England. Thank you so much. She's definitely a game changer for sure. Thank you for being with us. And guys, we hope you continue to take care of yourselves. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. Then you can check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these stories and headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you tomorrow.